Towering mountains, pierced by the blade of a god who left. A dried inland sea that reeks of the revenant blight and foul sorcery. A darkening veil corrupted by the night song of pagan witches. Tombs of ash and sand, holding secrets that can make a man mad. These and more are the Lands of Loom.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. A little while ago we featured a game called Loom, Portent of the Veil. I'll put the link up here. And that was a game which was inspired by the old text-based adventures that we used to have on the computers, on the PCs, before the days of high-resolution graphics, before the days of the internet even, we had these games where you had to type in commands. And Portent of the Veil really used that product essence, the text-based adventures, to present itself as a game in terms of the book, in terms of how it worked and everything else. But in this episode, in this video, we're going to be looking at a follow-up product, which is the lore book for the Lands of Loom, again by Shieldice Studios. And in this book, it is a setting guide. It is a foundation and bare skeleton for a new campaign. And like I say, it is system neutral, so you can use it with any game that you want. 5e if you really have to. Pathfinder, even Mork books. It should actually be quite a good setting for Mork book if you want a variation on the standard. And it features a lot of elements of the setting so that you can flesh it out a bit and then use it for an upcoming campaign. And it is written in a way that it can be used with anything. The statistics are very general in how they're presented, in how they are calculated and valued. So you can apply it to any kind of role-playing system. So what we're going to be doing is having a look through this book. I'll be showing you the different sections, telling you what I think at the end, and hopefully you guys will be interested and add it to your collection. Let's take a look. Right, here we have the lore book for the Lands of Loom, kindly sent to me by Jay at Shieldice Studios. It's not a huge book, not a really thick book. It has 77 pages, but it is a good foundation for a new campaign, and it is based on the same land that the Portent of the Veil game is set in, but here you obviously have a lot more detail about the lands themselves, about the more important or maybe the more likely to be interacted with NPCs. It also has sections on enemies, treasures, encounters, and things you may find. And like I say, it's a small book. It's about 77 pages, but you will need to flesh this out if you want to use it in a role-playing campaign, whether solo or with a group. So thanks once again to Jay from Shieldice Studios for sending me this. Let's take a look. Now, the design of the book, you'll notice right at the start, is very much based on the old school computer games design and the old school computers themselves in terms of the fonts that are used. Now, the fonts, these fonts aren't used for the whole thing. They're just used every now and again for, like I say, for aesthetics, for feel, for theme. But yeah, we're going to be starting off by looking here. But before we even get to the contents page, there is this code page. Within the book, including here, you'll notice that there are sometimes coded messages. And yeah, you can actually decode these, and you'll get certain messages, and you'll gain a little bit more information about what's going on. Some more here, and the way that you decode them is given here. What is this? It looks like an old, what's that? Commodore, Apple, maybe an Apple II keyboard, maybe a Commodore VIC-20 keyboard. But you're basically shown on here in terms of the keyboard what are the symbols for the code. So it's fairly easy to look at a picture or look at your keyboard and kind of translate into these coded messages. It's quite fun. I'm not going to reveal any of them because that will take away the fun of doing it, but some of these are quite interesting to decode. You'll also find that there are sort of handwritten messages throughout the book, as if some kind of, how do you pronounce it, archivist has kind of gone through making notes about what they've been doing, where they've been wandering, what they've found. And then you have a very simple map of the main area that this setting is based. It does talk about other areas, for example, the Barren over here to the east, about the Sea of Tears here to the southeast. But this seems to be the main focus of the setting and where the lands and the people are described in the book. Now, as I mentioned a little while ago, it's not an in-depth setting guide. It's not a 300, 400 page guide where everything is given to you. This really is kind of bare bones, but it really does set an interesting, and again, I use the same word, foundation for a new world to explore. So we have the Strath, we have the Vale. This is where we had the Portent of the Vale game set. You've got Titan's Reach, you've got the Pilgrim's Door, the Basin, the Highland of the Saints, Basin City, dangerous place. But yeah, this is the world of Loom. Hopefully you can see this okay. Hopefully the light's not too bad. Hopefully the fan's not making too much noise. I'm having to have the fan on as well as the aircon. It's really hot here at the moment. And once you've moved past the map, it goes straight into the religions, the gods that are affiliated with this world and that people worship or maybe sort of sacrifice to. There are a number of gods here. Some of them were mentioned in Portent of the Vale. Some of them are a little bit new or maybe explained a little bit more. Nice diagrams. You'll find throughout this book that there is a lot of art, a very distinct style, and it does still not move. It does lend itself towards that old school of game design when we used to have these text-based adventures. And again, you'll occasionally find things at the top here: enter command, pray at the Highland Shrine, and then it gives you the response as it would do in a text-based adventure. Now, for players who are as old as me, we remember these games with some kind of affection. Going back and playing them now doesn't bring the same wonder, the same amazement as it did back in the day, but they're still very interesting to play. Now, I am not going to read a lot from this book because it's a very interesting background, very interesting foundation, very interesting story for the setting. So I'm not going to read a lot in this video, but I want to sort of highlight the creation of this world in terms of the deities, the gods, and how this sort of the world of Loom came to be. And to do that, what I'm going to do is read this description of the god who left. But there's still a lot of other background, a lot of other stories and information that you can read for yourselves. But this is the background or the description for the god who left. It is told that at the time of the formation, the god who left ordered his generals, the three demiurges, to weave the light of the cosmos and using his tapestry plans knit a new world. Once woven, this god watched the turnings of these worlds of Loom. Centuries passed and his generals grew bored. So the demiurges that they're referring to are the three other kind of gods that are referred to in the Portent of the Vale game: Osseous, Ver, Nihil or Nile, and She. The Cosmic Three began to interfere with the life forces which had sprouted below, and slowly the lands of Loom and further shores descended into chaos.
The god who left wept at the horrors performed by his creations below, his tears of oil filling the once bountiful seas. The betrayal of his generals cut deep, and so in anger he took up his sword and slashed the roiling skies. Before he could mete out justice, however, he saw his angered reflection in the oceans of oil. In despair, he dropped the sword which pierced the mountain tops of Loom and left the world forever. The dark void became his home, and in time he was forgotten by most, save those of the highland who hold out hope for his return. Now, that basically gives you an idea about how the deities created and made the world as it is today. Why it is such a dark fantasy world now. Why it isn't all flowers and fairies and things like that and unicorns. But I don't want to read too much. Like I say, this book, this setting has a lot of depth, a lot of worthwhile reading inside. Then we go into, I would call these player or PC classes. I think roles would probably suit it better. So we have the Highland Knight and the Trail Guard, which are more your fighter sort of roles. We have the Drudge and the Defacer, who are kind of your outsiders, barbarian, kind of the ones who want to disrupt the current government or the current regency. There is a warrior, and the Defacer is a kind of sorcerer. We have the Archivist and we have the Lawkeeper. These are, what would be the best way of explaining these? They kind of live outside the system, but they are at the core of the system. They're kind of roles that are not sort of under the power of the law. They're kind of outside the law, but they still contribute to society in some kind of way. All 6 of these roles are very interesting. They've got very interesting backgrounds, very interesting descriptions of what they are, what they do, how you're supposed to play them. Also, recommended sort of statistics are given here in a very simple format, so it will be very easy to translate into different game mechanics. It tells you which of the gods they tend to worship, or that they have to worship, depending on the role. Typical skills and quotes. Now, the skills that are given is written very well. It's written in such a way that it could easily be translated into your system's skills. And again, you have icons and graphics that really do bring us back to the days of the old text-based adventures. Same thing with the Drudge. The Drudge is like your barbarian warrior, the warriors that are outside of your typical government who kind of rules the land. These are the guys who basically want to bring their society, religion, sort of back to sort of, preeminence, to power kind of thing. I think of these as, like I say, as very much like outsiders and barbarians. So yeah, you've got some classes and roles there that you can adapt and use. Then we've got some typical sort of artwork. It reminds me of the old video games that we used to have back in the day. Okay, and now we go into the setting itself in terms of the lands and the NPCs. And what you'll find in this book is it will give you a description of all of the main areas. So there'll be a description of the Strath, the Vale, the Basin, the Highlands. So you'll find a section on each. The first one that we come across is actually the Vale. This is the area that we played in when we did the Portent of the Vales. So it gives you a brief history, past and present. Again, you've got these notes from a wanderer, a traveller, who's basically trying to help us. Again, you've got the sort of text-based adventure intro. You reach a rise within the mountains, and beneath you stretches a long and darkening vale. Mist, like pale fingers, grasps at this land of shadowed dreams. Pagan chanting echoes upwards from the forests below. You are sure you see many eyes watching from the slow-moving clouds above. Your skin crawls here. And then you got the prompt. Enter the Vale, question mark? Yes. Go east, go east, go east. But yeah, so it gives you a little bit of history in terms of establishing the area to you, and then we go into the different factions that you can find within that area, within the Vale, and the sort of dominant, famous, important NPCs that you could find, along with possible quests that these NPCs may give you. Another thing is that each of the NPCs has been given a dice value, so again you can randomly roll up which one they find, for example, if you need to do that. In most of the areas they also give you a random table for other NPCs. These ones are more your common encounters in terms of who you find. So for here, for the Vale, it's a d20, so if you roll a 12, for example, a disrobed monk whips themselves along the road. Okay. That could give you a potential NPC to escort, to aid, to help, to donate to. I mean, there's a number of ways that you can interact with this monk that we find. But yeah, I've read through this book three times, and I actually find the story of each of these NPCs very, very interesting. You'll find that pretty much all of them are damaged in some way. I mean, not as much physically, but sort of mentally, in terms of not being all there, being tormented by a lost love, tormented by the Empress, maybe. She has sort of disowned them, thrown them out kind of thing. You'll also find, again, within the description of each of these NPCs, a lot of potential in terms of how to use them with your party. So yeah, we've got the Vale NPCs. We've got a couple of songs. Now the thing is, I've read through these songs a couple of times, and I'm kind of thinking how to what kind of music they would go with. Now there are some codes here, so I don't know if these codes. I haven't decoded all of these in the book. There's a lot there, so I'm not sure whether these codes would actually tell me what kind of song these should be sung to. But at the back of the book, Jay has put down some of the music that he was listening to while he was writing and designing the book. I don't know, songs of the Heraldress sung in black metal, or probably not thrash. Song of the Heraldress sung as a thrash metal song. I don't know whether it's going to work or not. But yeah, anyway, there's a couple of songs here. And also, you'll be finding, I think there are three kind of adventures in the book. And these are located at fairly important locations within the different areas. And it's kind of like a dungeon. I would call them dungeons. So the first of them is the Crypt of the First Monastery. The first monastery is actually a very important location within the Vales. And if your party or if your PCs decide to go and investigate the monastery, there may be some things they have to do first before they can enter. But this kind of sets the scene for maybe the first level. So it's very much like a dungeon crawl. It gives you the rooms and the corridors, and underneath is very basic information in terms of what your party will find within each of those areas. And I think there are 3 of these. Then we go to the next area, which is the basin. So going back to the map, here we are. There's the Vale. Here is the basin. Now the basin is actually a very interesting area. Not so much in terms of the people that inhabit it, but in terms of what happened there. Now, I'm not going to ruin the story because you can read it for yourself when you get this, but it has the basin has an extremely interesting past. So we have past and present, the history to sort of set us up. We have the factions and groups, we have the prominent NPCs. Again, there's some where we have quests which are linked with the NPCs. Then we have the second dungeon, and this is based at the Pilgrim's Door. Again, to enter the Pilgrim's Door, to enter this location, you may have to do some things. But again, once you get in, this is presented as a dungeon for you to use with your party. Then we go to Basin City, one of the major locations within the map. Here, Basin City. This is the seat of the Empress. You've got a very general, very basic map in terms of the different areas within the city. It doesn't give you a lot of detail specifically in terms of what is in each area. So again, this is where you'll need to flesh out and create your own maps and content to fill it out. But you are given a brief description of the city. Factions, again, NPCs, NPCs here. So you've got factions and NPCs for the general area of the basin, and then for the city itself, you're given a separate set of these factions. And again, the descriptions that are given for each of these can really cultivate some really good ideas for adventures. The NPCs, again, very, very interesting stories, telling about who they are, what they are, how they became what they are. Again, there are some linked quests and other NPCs that you can find. A celestial map, yes. You will find in this setting that there are certain celestial bodies, celestial elements that will impact how NPCs behave and how certain factions function. Try saying that when you're drunk. Factions function. But yeah, you're given a celestial chart with some basic data. It's not... I wouldn't say that this is a huge part of the setting, but it's definitely something that can be important at certain points or with certain groups of people. Then we go to the Strath. Now the Strath is the area north of the Vale, up here. And this is very much a kind of wilderness outsider area, a place where you can find a lot of those barbarians, like the Drudge and the Defacers. So it's a dangerous place to travel, but there is a lot of things you can find there. So again, you've got the history, past and present. Again, here you've got the little text-based adventure element here. Factions and groups. NPCs, again, very, very interesting NPCs. A little bit of a story here, the Helm of the Keepers. So there is a little bit of fiction in the book as well. And then we come to another sort of dungeon. Now, this is the city of God, how do you say this? Sungrad. And again, this is, if you read through the book, if you read through this setting, this city is another really interesting location which could kill your party or deliver great wealth into their hands. And it's presented in this old sort of, is it 8-bit, 16-bit format like the other dungeons? Where's the other one? There we go. So it's presented in the old school way, the way that we used to have. What was that game I used to play a lot of? Is it Gauntlet? I think Gauntlet, the sort of 2D fantasy game. So it's presented in that way. And I mean, being presented this way actually makes it very easy for GMs or for solo players to actually reconstruct each room. Because they're not presented in such a way that you feel you have to have boxes and boxes of terrain pieces. They're presented in such a way that you could very easily do it with just very simple dungeon tiles. And again, here you've got some descriptions about this first tier or this first level. Very interesting. Like I say, this is the kind of setting that I would like to play in rather than be the GM. After reading the setting book, it's definitely a place where I would actually like to play rather than run. The Highland of the Saints, again, another very interesting area up here, and this is where the Highland Knights come from. So again, you've got your description, your history. Again, the artwork is really, really nicely done. A little bit of a story again. We've got some stories within the book that really help us to understand the feel and what's going on. And then again, you got your prominent NPCs with quests. Eadwald, the Highland Knight with his lost love, factions and groups. Again, the artwork really is nice, very thematic, and it fits the world very, very well. The world is very dark. It's a very dark fantasy world. Another dungeon, so maybe there's 4. The Keep of Malmug. Again, I love the presentation. It really does take me back to the old days. And then some of the lesser locations, but which would be interesting to, again, to flesh out. But obviously these ones are not covered in as much detail. But yeah, there are some locations like the Gorge, the Goliath Gorge, the Sea of Tears, the Barren. Again, these areas are talked about in a number of places, but they really need fleshing out. You could really go wild with these. And then we come to the areas which gives us some, what's the word? Items, equipment, enemies. You've got sort of famous magic items or famous items listed here. These are mentioned within the book at certain points. I think pretty much all of them are mentioned at some point or other. So here is where they're kind of explained. So if you want to reward your party with some artifact, then you can look here. You've got information on flora and also the common potions of the land. Okay, now in terms of the enemies, we have a very simple bestiary here. You've got 6 common foes and 6 hidden foes. I wish there was more. Even sort of double the amount would really help, because as it is, it's not a huge amount of variety here. Again, the way they're presented, very much like the old games. Again, you can see here in terms of the artwork, it's very sort of pixelated in terms of the old games. The way that their statistics or their strengths and abilities are presented, again, is very easy to translate into different systems. Again, you've got little notes and codes, plenty of codes for you to decode. The hidden foes are ones that are more powerful, less likely to be encountered. But again, I mean, you can see how tough they are by their stats. But yeah, very easy to translate into other systems and other games. And then we have a whole bunch of encounters that you can roll on if you need something very quick, or maybe something that you want to insert into your group's travel. So you've got encounters or adventure prompts for the Trails of the Vale, Pathways of the Pilgrims, Routes of the Desert. Again, you'd be rolling a d20 for each of these, and it gives you a paragraph where you can then evolve it into just a simple encounter, or you can evolve it into a full-blown adventure. What's this one here? So this is on the Trails of the Vale, so the area that we encountered when we played Portents of the Vale. Let's say we rolled an 18. What appears to be a shooting star strikes at the sky, burning red and then white. It slows as if it is a lost piece of a circling moon, and then crashes nearby with thunderous reverberations. The air begins to taste metallic. Right, well, you know what your party's going to do, don't you? They're going to go and investigate this. Now, there are, if I remember correctly, there was an item or two that was linked with meteorites. I could be wrong, but I think I remember. The Heart of Sorcery and Ember Shards. These are both things that fell from the cosmos. So yeah, that little encounter role here could develop into a full-blown adventure where we try to find the landing site of this meteorite, and then maybe we have to deal with other interested parties or interested creatures before we can actually take what the meteorite has brought from the cosmos. That could be quite interesting. Yeah, there's plenty of adventure prompts and encounter descriptions. You've also got an encounter generator here. If these kind of don't fulfill what you want, or maybe you keep rolling the same thing, or maybe you want something a bit more random, you can come here to the encounter generator. It recommends here roll a d10 3 or 4 times, which will give you the list to roll on, and then roll a d20 on each table. So let's say, for example, we rolled a 2, a 4, and a 6. State, enemy, and cosmos. So we can then roll a d20 on each of these, combine them together to create an encounter prompt. Bump, bump. We've then got an advert for a fictional movie on the old VHS tape, and soundtrack. Is there going to be a soundtrack? I'll have to check. I don't know if this is just, I mean, because like obviously this is a fantasy thing. It doesn't actually exist, but I'm just thinking, I don't know whether he's actually going to do, I don't know whether Jay and Shieldice Studios is actually going to do a soundtrack for Loom. That would be quite interesting. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, why is there got a bit of a dent in the book? Yeah, I don't know where that came from. Why is there a dent in my book? Never mind. Right. So yeah, that is the lore book for the Land of Loom. A very interesting setting. There are some elements that are familiar that we've seen before, but there are also a lot of elements here that are very, very different, especially if you read through the whole book, reading the history, the NPCs, the factions, how it all links together. It actually creates a very interesting setting. And like I say, it is system neutral, so you can apply this to any system. I think in terms of the setting itself, it would work really well with a game like Mork Bork. In terms of it being so dark. And again, reading through this and playing through Portent of the Veil, I'm kind of getting the feeling that it's very much a, what's the word? Well, it's like a dark cloud is over everything. You know, it's very hard to see the light, the bright, the good in the world itself. Sort of depression, desperation is constantly around you in this world here. If that's what your players are looking for, or maybe that you are looking for as a solo gamer, I would highly recommend taking a look at this. It could be the basis for your next campaign. But like I say, this is very much just a basic foundation, sort of bare bones. You will need to flesh it out to an extent, depending on how long your campaign's going to be, how far reaching it's going to be, whether your PCs are really going to be involved in the politics, in the actions of the different factions and groups. Obviously, yeah, the more that they want to do that, or the more that you want them to do that, the more work you're going to have to do to flesh this out. But it does provide us with a very nice beginning, a very nice foundation. So, the lore book for the Lands of Loom from Shieldice Studios. You can find this, I think, on Drive-Thru RPG at the PDF. I'll put the link down below. I'm not sure if you can get the hard copies anywhere else. I think this is from, I think Jay sent me this from Drive-Thru RPG. I mean, in terms of the binding, it's actually okay. It hasn't ripped itself apart yet, like my Broken Shores book. So yeah, thumbs up for the printing, thumbs up for the binding, for my copy at least. But yeah, if you're interested in a new campaign setting, that's something that's dark, something that's in a new world, and a product which is very much designed with the aesthetic of old text-based adventures, highly, highly recommend. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Add a like, add a subscription if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care, stay safe, cheers.